Mark Potok is director of the Intelligence Project, I like that name, at the Southern Poverty Law Center. And Don Clark, my good buddy, former FBI special agent. Mark, let's start with you. Do you really think you can shut the Imperial clans down if you win this case?
Well, I think what's very likely to happen if we win is that the Imperial Clans of America will be forced to sell their compound. It's a 15-acre piece of land in Dawson Springs, Kentucky, and it's a fairly important place. They throw a skinhead festival there every year. People of all stripes from the radical right come there. So, yeah, I think we'll be able to damage them substantially.
Well, Don Clark, the first time I heard about that compound where they have these rituals and this terrible thing apparently was cooked up in the compound before they went out and actually beat up on this kid, I thought, why hasn't the government raided this in a criminal sense? Why do these compounds even exist in the 21st century?
Well, you know, Jane, being in law enforcement, you think about those things also. But bear in mind, and particularly with groups that are American citizens and that they are on this soil, the law enforcement just cannot go in there, no matter how despicable these acts may be, unless there's some evidence of a crime going to take place or that a crime has taken place. And we went through this for years. In fact, at one point in time, that there was also a consideration of kind of putting groups like the Ku Klux Klan under a crime watch so that we could take a look at them. Well, that didn't go anywhere because it started to step on rights. So the bottom line is, unless you have some information, you just can't barge in there.
Now, this is a civil case, Mark Potok, and apparently there's an all-white jury. Does that worry you a little bit?
It doesn't worry me in the least. You know, I think that the facts of the case are very good from where we sit. You know, basically these guys were on a recruiting mission at a county fair when they beat Jordan Groover up very badly indeed. The fact that they were on essentially official business of the Klan, the fact that the leader of this group, Ron Edwards, had put them in this position without in any way reviewing their violent past and so on, I think makes a very good case for us.
You know what I thought was the most telling piece of information I read about this case is that one of the defendants, Edwards, the so-called Imperial Wizard, tattooed on his shaved head something negative and profane about the Southern Poverty Law Center. He must have a very big head to do that kind of a tattoo. Have you seen it?
Yes, as a matter of fact, when we went to take his deposition, he appeared with a freshly shaved head and FSPLC, except that he spelled out the F. So it was quite amazing to see this. On the other side of his head, he's got Death to Zog tattooed, which Zog stands for Zionist Occupied Government.
Well, you know,
so
these people
I don't think that's going to do him much good with the jury.
Scary. They are so scary, Don Clark, and that's probably why there's so much security at the courthouse, because they don't know what crazy skinhead is going to do what when it comes to cases like this. You know, they're getting them, though, with the money, just like they got Al Capone finally on tax evasion. Is that the smart way to go?
Well, I think you've got to try to go both ways. I think law enforcement, Jane, has to continue to develop information, and if there's intelligence out there, they've got to act upon it to keep people from getting hurt in the first place. But then the second place is, I do agree with these civil movements, because that will hopefully hit them where they're hurt in their pocketbooks and maybe minimize some of this. But I have to be very honest with you, Jane. This group has been going on for almost 150 years now, and here we are today facing the same types of activities that they fought back 150 years ago.
No, it's frightening, and what really scares me is that they have 23 chapters in 17 states. These groups are very complex, so let me ask you about this, Mark Potok, because apparently there is a connection to those two knucklehead skinheads that were just accused of plotting to assassinate Barack Obama, although they seemed like basically so dumb that nobody really took them that seriously, but they were arrested and they are charged. Correct me if I'm wrong here. According to you, the leader of the Imperial Clans of America has a son who runs a group called the Supreme White Alliance, and that organization has a connection to those two skinheads who were just arrested.
That's right. Steve Edwards, the son of Ron Edwards, heads this group, which just began early this year, Supreme White Alliance. And in fact, we have pictures of one of the two skinheads arrested in Tennessee in the alleged plot. A guy named Daniel Cowarts, involved in an SWA party. As a matter of fact, it was a party held on Hitler's birthday this spring, in which this gang of skinheads is sitting around with a little cake with SWA in the middle, which is supposed to celebrate, as I said, the birthday of Adolf Hitler.
And these are equal opportunity haters. I mean, they don't just hate blacks or Hispanics, they hate Jews, they hate homosexuals, they hate everybody, basically, that is not one of them. And here's what one of the defendants in the case had to say.
What do you think about being here today to defend yourself against these charges?
I think it's corrupt.
How so?
Because it's a false testimony. They're using false accusations against us. I already pleaded, had a plea bargain into it, in which I found that I wasn't actually guilty, but I'm still having to do it. So I'm just here because the law makes me here.
So, Mark Potok, they are saying they're not guilty, and yet one of the people that you are suing actually had something tattooed on his forehead. I mean, is that what somebody who's not guilty does?
Well, I mean, look, these two guys were convicted in a criminal court, so they can protest to the skies now that they're not guilty. But in fact, the two of them served 2 years in prison. You know, if they want to tell the world that they weren't guilty after all, it seems a little late for that.
Don Clark, has the election of America's first African-American president kind of flushed out some of these hate groups, brought them to the surface? I mean, instead of being off in some camp somewhere, they've been sort of become enraged, and then they're coming out of the woodwork, as it were.
Yeah, let's face it, Jane, there is still hatred out there, and groups like this, they really thrive upon activities such as what we've just had in this country, where a black man becomes president of the United States, and clearly that's going to fuel some of the fires. But Jane, that's where law enforcement has to get in gear too, because they have to really keep their antennas up. While they can't spy on these people, but they have to keep their antennas up for information that may be, that a crime might be going to happen, and try to make sure that it doesn't happen. So it's all about prevention now, to try to catch these people before they go beyond just beating up someone, but until they really injure or kill someone.